This morning, we're here to talk about something that's very important. Since coming into office in 2019, of course, I have been here in Georgia now for 23 years. And I have always lived in South DeKalb. Prior to coming, of course, I can remember being in college on Memorial Drive, going to Jilly's restaurant, and that was the place. Anyone in here remember Jilly's? Wonderful restaurants. Wonderful shopping, and over the years, as many urban cities have moved forward, we have seen a regression of development in some communities. So understanding what we need, I understand and I see where we need to go. And today we are here to talk about economic development. Oftentimes, many of you will write me and say, well, Commissioner, where are we? What has happened? And there is a lot going on, and I stand before you and I say I have great faith in the future of DeKalb County. We have excellent leaders that are in place. I think in some ways, Commissioner Terry, let me acknowledge him. He's going to be coming up. He's my cohort. He has Super District 6. So when we enter the room, you have the entire county. So it's easy to work with him because that gives us the fiduciary authority to say, oh, we're going to cover the county this morning. But with that said, when you talk economic development as a community, there are a lot of issues that must be discussed. When you talk economic development, you talk public safety. People want to locate in good, safe communities. When you talk economic development, you talk code enforcement. You talk blight. We have an annual contract for over $3 million for litter remediation, which is a fancy word for picking up paper in DeKalb County. That money could be better spent. It should be going towards our parks, things that are sustainable that we can see. So we have to help educate each other also in being better neighbors and caring more for our own environment. So today, we're going to talk with the people that are on the front end, because often you don't know those parties who are responsible for the long-term strategic planning of DeKalb County. When we say come out and join us because we are in the process of creating our comprehensive plan, we need you to log in, because it is during those planning sessions that we strategically plan the future of DeKalb. So today we'll talk about everything from our 2050 plan to our unified plan here in DeKalb, our strategic growth, as well as give you updates. And at this time, I'm going to ask the panel members, as I call your name, to come forward. But before I do that, Commissioner Terry, would you like to come up and say anything? I see you've already taken your seat.
Thank you, Commissioner. I got my Chick-fil-A sandwich and my coffee. We're ready to go. Let me say good morning to everyone. Good morning. And thank you so much to Commissioner Cochran-Johnson's team for helping organize everything. I just sort of kind of joined in, but her team organized, put everything together, did the run of show, got our guests here. And so really appreciate her concerted, diligent team, her level of expertise. It's been a real joy to work with Lorraine over the last 2 years. I'm going to my third year now. I've learned a lot from Lorraine. Of course, I was a mayor in the small city of Clarkston for the last 7 years previous, and so I bring a little bit different experience at the city level. But I can tell you that since being at the county and working with all the individuals that you're going to hear from today, it is amazing the amount of skills and the knowledge that we have in this county. And if it were not for them, we would be so far behind. And so I think today we're really going to talk about the things that have already basically happened or could be happening. And this is almost a 2022 review. Even more things happening this year and the years to come. So we're just really excited to be here. Looking forward to hearing y'all's thoughts, your ideas, and like Lorraine said, envisioning that DeKalb that we wish to see. Because economic development is not just about just jobs and numbers on a spreadsheet, but it's about the community that we wish to live in. Right here, right now, but also for our future generations. And whether we talk about the planning aspect of it, the zoning aspect of it, the regulation of it, all of this comes together to create a place that we like to call home, that we're proud to call home, that we're proud to invite people to come and visit us. And when we say that we're from DeKalb County, people say, oh yeah, I like DeKalb County. They're doing good stuff right there. That's what we want to see. So I think today you'll have a lot of things to hear about that we can be proud to tell other folks about. And please consider this as an opportunity to get that list of things that are going on, things that are up ahead, and to spread the good word because we want to keep this train moving forward. So with that, Commissioner, thank you so much for being here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Ted, you can't sit there. We need all 5 of those seats. You come up here. Okay. All right. There's several people here, too. I see we have our CID president, Mr. Chris. Is it Saunders, the last name? Sanders, that is present with us also. And thank you for coming out because our CIDs play a very important role. The second half of this town hall will specifically focus on revitalization efforts for South DeKalb Mall and a site-specific plan that I have commissioned. And that was done through Mr. Ryan Gravel. And Ryan, I want you to stand up now so that individuals here know who you are. This young man, while a graduate student, was it at Georgia Tech or Georgia Tech, developed the concept that was the Atlanta Beltline. He is an urban planner, and I'm very proud to have you in DeKalb and work alongside you. Now, at this time, as I call your name, please come forward. We have James Burge. He is a long-range planner for DeKalb County with planning and sustainability. We also have Mr. Dorian DeBar. Dorian DeBar, and just take your seat at the table. Dorian DeBar is with Decide DeKalb Development Authority. Of course, Dorian is charged with recruitment of business and industry, also the retention of business and industry here in DeKalb. Also, when we talk development, incentives come from his office. In order to receive incentives with DeKalb County, it requires a minimum of a $10 million investment, but there are also wraparound and support services that we provide to businesses as needed. Everything from business plans, as well as the procurement of funding. Because one of the things that I want you to know that if we're going to change our trajectory in DeKalb, we have to subscribe to the Oprah channel and we have to own it. Even when it comes to franchising, every year I host a franchise expo in Cobb County, and I would hope to see some of you there. Franchising is one of the easiest ways to own a business because there is a model. But franchises, as a general rule, are within 5 to 8 miles of the owner's home. In South and unincorporated DeKalb, often we have not because we own not. We wait for people to bring into the community what it is we desire. When it is time for us to go out there, own it. So that is why we're here today, to help you move forward with whatever your project may be. You all are the solution to affordable housing. I know that there's some builders in the room today, so I just can't emphasize enough how important you are. And Dorian is here to make that happen. We also have Dr. Aaron Kimball with us. He is the Special Projects Manager for DeKalb Planning and Sustainability. We also have from Planning and Sustainability the manager, Miss Sylvia Smith. Always good to have a woman in the middle of things, and she's the manager, and it's always a joy working with her. When it comes to your comprehensive plans, your master plans, she is that woman who always spearheads it and hosts all of our town halls. And we also have Larry Washington, of course, last but not least, and he is the planning administrator. So at this time, one of the things that I wanted you to see, because this went almost with little to no notice, incredible document that was created that showed by district, by commission district, the development that had taken place in DeKalb County, and it almost went unnoticed. But we can't light a candle and place it under a bushel, and that's not from the book of Lorraine, okay? Oftentimes, you all know not what we do. So today we are here to tell you, and I will begin with letting you all, in whatever manner and order you see fit, begin the conversation, and Allison will cue up the slides.
Thank you, commissioners. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Next slide, please. So as the commissioner said, this is a meeting today to talk a little bit about the Planning and Sustainability Division. We'll briefly talk about the 2050 Unified Plan, and we'll spend more time talking about development and then the Q&A session. Next slide, please. So within the divisions of Planning and Sustainability are business license, land development, permits, inspections, zoning, and long-range planning. Next slide. The purpose today. The purpose is to provide an overview of how land use and transportation set policies that leads to zoning and development. Next slide. So the 2050 Unified Plan, I'm sure most of you are familiar with this plan. Years ago, there was always a transportation plan and there was always a comprehensive land use plan. Well, DeKalb reached out to the Atlanta Regional Commission, those are our partners for the plans, and decided, hey, we want to bridge that gap and combine the plans. And so we created the 2050 Unified Plan. And so with that, we saw an opportunity to better coordinate and align the 2014 Comprehensive Plan, which you may have heard of, and then the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. And so with that, we found out with this plan, and one of the goals was to create a more holistic and coordinated plan for the county's future. So often as planners, as you see up here, we ask ourselves a question: does transportation investment pave the way for new growth and development, or does new growth spur the need for additional transportation infrastructure? Now, while the connection between land use and transportation is often apparent to everyone that is needed, in true reality, neither one of them come first. There has to be a balance between the two to create development. Next slide. So within the 2050 Unified Plan, as I said before, normally we talk about land use, we talk about transportation, but when we created the 2050 Unified Plan, we wanted to create other elements to create policy, to create other plans. And so with that, some of the policy spotlights in the plan is economic development, retail, health and wellness, transit-oriented development, sustainability, and arts and culture. If you have not reviewed the plan, I encourage you to review the plan, because these are initiatives and goals that we plan for from now up to the next 30 years. And so that plan is on Planning and Sustainability's website. And if you don't have the information, you can see me afterwards and I will give it to you, but I think we have a QR code up. But I encourage you to be involved. And so with that, in terms of transportation, when we met with the citizens, there were 3 top priorities that were established to help create a baseline for transportation. And the first one was creativity across modes. And so that's not only looking at cars, it's looking at how pedestrians travel through, it's looking at how people cross over, it's looking at transit, bicycle, and pedestrian modes. So we want all that connectivity so that everyone can be involved in some type of way, and also create healthy communities for everybody, because everybody wants a healthy community. Sidewalks, they want a chance to have change in their community and improve the safety in the community. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Larry Washington, and Larry Washington is going to talk briefly about land use. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Sylvia. I really appreciate that. And again, thanks, Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson and Ted Terry, for having us this morning. I see our planning director back here, Cedric Hudson. I just want you to throw your hands up. Mr. Hudson is in the house. But one of the most important things about economic development in the county is land use. So Sylvia talked about the comprehensive plan, but I want to talk about the land use and what all the components that goes into land use. So when we talk about land use and how the county developed and economic growth development in the county, how development goes in the county, well, we look at it from 3 key points. It would be the comprehensive plan, the land use policy, and activity centers. And when you talk about the comprehensive plan, the process that goes into that, we go to the community and we develop and we talk to the community about issues that's in the community. We also talk about opportunities that's in the community. We also discuss how to set goals for the community. So it's imperative that community members get involved in the comprehensive plan. So if you're having issues in your community, if you want to expound on opportunities in your community, and you want to further set goals in your community, this is the document that you do it in. And once we identify the issues and opportunities in the community, we develop land use policies. And those policies help shape and guide development in your community. It's what developers have to use for guidance. So that's important, right? So with that being said, also we use the activity centers. Activity centers help support growth and development in your community. And then also it protects single-family housing, single family in your area. So if you don't want so much density in your area, we're protecting that through activity centers, right? And then also new and more intense development is focused within the activity centers. So I thought that was very important to kind of recap because we don't get a lot of participation when it comes to the comprehensive plan. And I really truly believe it's because people are not aware of the power that it has in shaping your community and your neighborhood. And then also it helps you to be an advocate for yourself when it comes to understanding land use, okay? Most of the time we see things are being developed in our community and we say, oh, what is this? Well, here's a way that you can get plugged in and understand how that process works. Next slide, please. So also, another way to look at the activity centers we have is what we call a future land use map. This map right here is another way where we characterize land in the county. I talked about activity centers. We have regional centers, we have neighborhood centers, and we have town centers. And this controls the density. So let me give you an idea of what a regional center is. Regional centers, if anyone is familiar with Perimeter Mall, that's a regional center. You got major employment, you got major housing, a lot of density in that area. MARTA is in that area, so it really moves people in that area. That's a regional center. Now that area was once in DeKalb County, unincorporated DeKalb County, but it became incorporated with Dunwoody, right? So now we have designated other areas in the county to focus that growth in. And one of the ones that comes to mind is Kensington Station. That is now a regional center. And if you've been around Kensington Station lately, you'll see major development that's taking place over there. I mean, it's a hotbed of growth that's happening. And we're seeing the change and the transition that's happening in that area. So that's a good indicator that, hey, this is becoming what the policy have shaped it to become, a regional center, right? And then town center, just to give you an idea of what a town center looks like. Downtown Decatur, it's a town center. It's a smaller scale, less dense, but that's what it is. And then a neighborhood center, when you leave out your house, you got a shopping center right there, Kroger's, Publix, something that serves you right away, real quick, that's a neighborhood center. Just an idea. And then you have other character areas, as I mentioned, single family homes, so that's a suburban area, traditional areas, and then more rural areas, which we characterize as rural communities. But the future land use map is one of the core components of the comprehensive plan. We usually change this quite often because we do get a lot of land use amendments and text amendments that come in the county, so we want to make sure that that future land use map reflects current time, right? Next slide. So we have developers in here, and for the developers who have done work in the county and has did development, they know about the land use text amendment. And one of the ways that sometimes when we forecast activity centers and forecast character areas, we don't always get it right. And the reason why is because the social trends change, the development change for communities, and every community is unique and particularly in its own way. So when they see an area, a developer come in and see an area and say, hey, you know, this is a town center, but I think that the social trend is changing. What I want to do, I want to come in here and add more density, add more mixed use, and it doesn't fit the town center mode. Well, they have an opportunity to come in and do a land use or text or map amendment. And here's the process of that. And that's a public hearing process. And I want to camp out on this a little bit, because this is where your voice is heard. This is where you have an opportunity to come before your commissioners and petition whether you like a development or not. And let me tell you, your commissioner right here that's sitting in front of me, they listen to their constituents. They listen to every word. I know Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, she would send you an email back saying received. I mean, if anybody know Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, she would send an email back saying received, noted, and she take action. So when you see developers and you see petitions, you see signs on property, it's important that you look at those signs, get involved. On our planning website, we have information on the website where you can get on there and find out exactly what's happening. Nothing is done in privacy or secret. Everything is publicly available and is at your fingertips. So you have access, you have the power to see what it is and determine what that development should look like as well. All right? So this is the process that they go through in order to change a map amendment. Sylvia over there telling me, Larry, the time is ticking. I'm coming, Sylvia. Next slide, next slide. All right, in closing, the comprehensive plan helps inform decision makers. These are your decision makers, so it helps that. It helps shapes how the county will look in the future and the type of jobs that we will get within the county. So I'm going to bring up Dr. Kimball. He's going to talk about all of the good development that's taking place in the county in different areas and different districts in the county as well. So Dr. Kimball, if you'll come up and share that information.
And as Dr. Kimball is coming, I just wanted to sort of grab the microphone because I need everyone to understand that I read every email you send. I have a really bad habit. But beyond that, you know, you often reach out and you say, well, I want what I see here. And we'll say here, we'll say Decatur, which we've identified as a town center. Now, when it comes to economic development, there's two things, and I do as much as I can to educate people. If you call I'll just say a Whole Foods, and you say, I want you in my community, they are going to be primarily concerned with two things: the rooftops and the median household income within that defined area. Those two things alone will tell whether or not you have the capacity in that area to sustain that business. So I need you all, because we are changing in DeKalb in many ways. And when you think of when there's applications that come through planning and sustainability for a new business, you have to ask, does this get us closer to becoming who we want to be? Because in certain parts of DeKalb County, we do not have the density. In other parts of DeKalb, we have the income. So for instance, 30038 zip code, Stonecrest, Georgia, second only in African American wealth to Prince George's County, Maryland. But not a lot of business there. It lacks the density. And you got a group of folk that are quick to say no. You have to start saying yes to development and work through myself and Commissioner Terry so that we are able to give you what you want, increase property values, but you can't have it both ways. Because in many areas, we do not have the critical mass, which are the rooftops, to move forward or attract the certain types of businesses that you want. And I'm going to sit down because I know Sylvia is going to tell me to, and we're on a short timeline here. So, Doc, I'm turning it over to you. But I just had to say that because you guys have to understand how this works together.
So thank you so much, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson. Really appreciate that. I'm going to be swift because I know Sylvia has us on a time crunch. So let's go to the next slide. We're going to talk about business licenses real quickly, as well as permitting real quickly. So the business license process is typically a very simple process, although I know that a lot of people will say that it hasn't been as simple in the past. So one of the things that's very important to understand about the business license process is that you must have all your documents. All the documents include your application, your ID, your affidavit, and those forms have to be notarized, and those are the bare minimum. With this, we have a QR code here. Understand and recognize, please, that we're available and open to be able to help you to get your business license. Next slide, please. Similarly, with the permitting process, the permitting process is a little bit more in-depth and intense when we talk about the permitting process. The permitting process actually includes applying for a permit. It also includes the certificate of occupancy, as well as it includes the inspection process. So with that particular process, what we typically do is we try to deliver 7 to 10 business days within the review process. Sometimes we don't meet that mark, and I'm just going to be transparent. However, what I love about this particular process is that our managers, our planners, we are all here to be able to assist you in that particular process. And I'm particularly talking to the developers and the builders here that are with us this morning. Next slide, please. So one of the things that I enjoy about being a part of the Planning and Sustainability group is that we get a chance to brag. And so for the next couple of slides, we're going to brag on some of the things that we're actually doing in the community. And so let's talk about some of the things that we're actually doing. So we focused over the last year and a half on the projects that really stood out, the projects that are actually making way in this particular community. So next slide, please. What we did was we compiled a methodology. So that methodology consists of 100,000 square feet, which is a bare minimum of retail or mixed-use space or apartment complex space, which we'll talk about in just a second. We're also going to talk about affordable housing. We're going to talk about economic development tools. And one of the major components of this is actually going to be our declared construction value, which of course the bare minimum obviously is $500,000. So next slide, please. All right, starting in District 1, Commissioner Robert Patrick. District 1 is highlighted by one major project, and that particular project is going to be the Mercer University Health and Pharmacy Science Building at $21.6 million. Now, if you guys are traveling, this particular project is actually at the intersection of 85 and 285. So adjacent to this particular project is going to be the Mercer Village Atlanta Student Housing Complex, which was done simultaneously with this particular project. Again, almost $22 million that is being brought to District 1. Next slide, please. All right, our newly elected commissioner, Commissioner Michelle Long-Spears, has a project that is called Lumen Briarcliff. So for those of you who are in the room who know about what a mixed-use project is, a mixed-use project is an apartment complex. It's also an apartment complex that is surrounded by retail and other businesses that are adjacent to that particular apartment complex. $42.3 million, and this project is slated to actually begin, start housing and leasing in the fall of 2023. All right, next project, or next slide, I should say. And the next project we're going to talk about and highlight, Commissioner Larry Johnson, the Meridian Decatur project, which is an affordable housing project. As a matter of fact, District 3 houses more affordable housing projects than any other within DeKalb County. So that particular project is valued at $40 million and approximately 271,000 square feet. Next slide.
And let me also say, you know, I look at this and I get excited, but also let me say that we've had some of the best of DeKalb annexed.
Yes.
And we don't need that anymore. It's time we get those people under the dome straight, because some of these projects, I'm very concerned because we have done the work. And as soon as the development takes place, annexation, because there goes the tax revenue Because when you're talking about projects that generate $40 million and $21 million, that's how you see transitions in community, because those are tax dollars that are being paid by those businesses. So I commend you all, and it's my job to fight to keep these things. Keep going.
Absolutely. So what we'll do is let's hold the questions until afterwards, and I'll be happy to answer all those questions. All right. So next slide. All right. District 4, Project Utopia Warehouse, as a matter of fact. And this particular project is a project that focuses heavily on building engines and things of that nature. That particular project is valued at $20 million and 484,000 square feet. Next slide, please. All right. District 5. So I'm proud to talk about this particular project, and I'll tell you why specifically. So Indian Creek, or Electric Owl Studios, that is a wonderful, wonderful project, and I'll tell you why specifically. So their motto, interestingly enough, is where film takes flight. So this project is valued at $43 million. But what is so great about this particular project is that not only is it bringing jobs to DeKalb, which is very important for all of us, it is also, and interestingly enough, a 30% sustainable project, which means that it's saving money for DeKalb, and it's very important. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to James just for a second, and then I'll come back to close us out.
And let me say, although you didn't see 6 and 7 for Commissioner Terry and I, we bite into almost everything. I think we're coming up, though. But yeah, many of these projects, because that's my district, so we sit here like proud parents.
Yes, as the commissioner just mentioned, here is the same data, but by super commission districts. So of course there's overlap there and probably a little jurisdictional confusion sometimes, but yeah, this is the same data added together for District 6, which covers the western half of the county running north to south, so very long and narrow district, covering a wide variety of area and 28 total projects in that area. Next slide, please. And here's District 7 with Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, covering the eastern half of the county with a total of 20 projects. And going from here, I will demonstrate my interactive story map, which will allow you to look at these projects in more detail.
So overall, all combined, that's almost $400 million in projects. So when you say, you know, what's going on in DeKalb, what's happening, what's being developed, it's really that we're not doing a good job of telling you. But I will sit here and say that there is no lack of interest in DeKalb, and in particular, South and unincorporated DeKalb. You are seeing property values rise, you are seeing investors, you're seeing gentrification, and we'll talk about some more things that you'll see shortly.
This right here is our story map, which is an application through ArcGIS Online, which is a GIS stands for Geographic Information Services, which is a digital mapping technology. And online is the online version, which allows you to display information through the web. So anyone can access this through the internet and make the sharing of information easier. One issue in the kind of comprehensive planning process is the use of static maps is something that the average person might have trouble reading. People don't really experience their community through static maps or like broad aerial views. They experience the area immediately around them. And one thing that interactive mapping allows you to do, it's kind of like Google Maps. It allows you to zoom in and out to the area immediately around you and zoom out to see how that relates to the context of the area. So that makes the information more accessible to the average person. So this story map we've created is an abbreviated version of the presentation Aaron just gave with some of the same information and more details about each project. Yes, I was trying to figure out how to zoom in, which can be quite confusing to a layperson. This shows, map includes both the commission districts, so you can see which projects fall within which districts, and the municipal boundaries or area shaded to show which parts of the county are incorporated versus unincorporated, because that is something that could be hard to tell for, and is one of the main differences between incorporated areas and unincorporated areas is the jurisdictional control over development and permitting. So that distinction is very important. Like, for example, but people aren't always aware what jurisdiction they're in. People come to the permitting office all the time in the wrong jurisdiction. Especially addresses can make it confusing because the name of the city on people's address isn't necessarily the jurisdiction they're in. For example, I believe this site the address is in Decatur, even though we're not in the city of Decatur, we're in unincorporated DeKalb.
And Commissioner Terry and I will be doing a special edition newsletter that will have this interactive map so you guys can click the dots and see what is happening and has happened, all the amazing projects that have come online.
All right. Yes. It's already hot. Okay. So this is the one for Super District 6, and we have the same map for 7, but for the sake of time, we'll go ahead and we'll close out.
Yeah, sorry, keep scrolling down one. Sorry, this is 1 through 5. We're not on the map on the left. Scroll down.
I think he really wants us to see 6 and 7, but we're there. It's okay. And you all will get all of these projects because we really have some amazing projects that have come online. And my hat is off to those who are sitting here.
Always the perils of using new technology. Yes, just to show very briefly, this is the same information, but by District 6 and 7. So you can see it by both maps and see the differences there. All right, there we go.
All right, thank you, James. So we'll conclude just real quickly. So I want to say that, and Planning and Sustainability, and Director Hudson can attest to this, everyone else can attest to this as well, we work hard. We work hard to be able to bring these projects to you. So as Commissioner Cochran-Johnson actually alluded to, this is over $500 million, actually close to $500 million in terms of projects that we're bringing to you. So $500 million of projects from January 2022 to April 2023. So I want you guys to really engage with that. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to Commissioner Cochran-Johnson.
Okay, at this point, I'm going to go ahead and call over Mr. Dorian DeBar from South DeKalb Development Authority, because all of the projects you see here, for the most part, at some point they make a stop there. Because when you're dealing with projects that are high dollar, there's usually some conversations about incentives. And also, one thing that we didn't talk about today that's also critical to economic development is infrastructure. And I can say that we don't talk enough about the good things in DeKalb, because when we talk about infrastructure, many of you may not be familiar with Snapfinger Wastewater Treatment Facility that's coming online. But for many years, South and unincorporated DeKalb, we have struggled. Hello, Representative Becky Evans has joined us today. Thank you for coming out. Yes. But back to the Snapfinger, we have not had the water sewer capacity to sustain certain projects that wanted to come online. So DeKalb is not suffering from a lack of interest. In some areas, we've had a lack of infrastructure. So when that plant came online, at the time, it was the largest wastewater treatment facility in the United States. But since that time, Los Angeles is now building one that is larger. But that will give us the capacity to grow for years. So I won't go into my public works and infrastructure because we now have, and Commissioner Terry sits with me on that, a capacity assurance program. Because as we increase, enlarge, and replace the pipes, it allows us to bring more projects online. So we are being able right now to bring more and more online each day. So I don't want to take away from that, but I also want to acknowledge we have with us Lillian McKenzie, because when we talk about partners in the community, she is very valuable. She's with Saunders Health Plans, and Lillian Stan, because she educates, yes, there you go. She actually does a lot of education in the area of Medicare and Medicaid because we want to keep healthy communities as well. So many great people here. And I also see we have with us Miss Rita Scott, and Rita will become important very much so during the second half, as well as Mr. Rod Frierson, and they are our MARTA representatives, and you're doing a great job. It's time for us to do our job so you can do a better job. So I'm going to acknowledge that this morning. And now you go ahead and tell them, Dorian, about what you do.
All right, good morning, beautiful people. Good to see you all this Saturday morning. My name is Dorian DeBar. I'm president, and I proudly serve as president of the South DeKalb Development Authority. We are your primary economic development organization for DeKalb County and all of its 13 cities, and we work in collaboration with those 13 cities to bring you all a better quality of life here in DeKalb County. We are responsible for business retention, which means we want to make sure our businesses stay here in DeKalb County. So if you're a small business owner, large business owner, multinational corporation, we want you to be comfortable and remain here in DeKalb County. We're also responsible for business expansion, which means if you are in DeKalb County, you want to retain and stay here, we want you to grow. More jobs is a better community. A better community is a safer community. We're also responsible for business attraction. We want to make sure companies and corporations and business owners across this globe know about DeKalb County and that we will promote and bring those businesses to DeKalb County. And so I work in collaboration, and my team works in collaboration with these two wonderful commissioners right here. I'm going to call them out, Commissioner Terry and Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson, and all of these wonderful folks in the room. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of the South DeKalb even further. So I already spoke to who the South DeKalb is. We have actually only been an organization since 2014. So we are relatively new, but we are definitely a powerful organization. Next slide, please. So how we help businesses, I'm going to breeze through this. I really could give you 2 hours of this, but I would tell you if you need more information, we are an open organization. Go to our website, decidedecalb.com. All of this information plus more is on our website, plus you can reach out to me directly or any member of my team, and we'd love to have those conversations. So we provide targeted incentives to businesses, and we'll go over a few of those incentives. We also do permitting coordination. And so, again, when you're talking about business retention and expansion, you want to make sure it's a coordinated effort and that we make business and doing business here in DeKalb County extremely easy, all right? If it's not easy, businesses don't want to do that. Time is money, and we all understand that. So in DeKalb County, we want to make sure it's an easy path. And again, business retention and expansion, which I mentioned, brownfield revolving loan funding, that's one of those incentives, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. And then workforce development. That's a key component to what we do as well. So we have these pillars. So again, BRE, business retention and expansion and attraction. Workforce development is important. If you want to open a business in DeKalb County to make widgets, but you don't have widget makers, why are you in DeKalb County? So we have to make sure we have widget makers in DeKalb County. And again, through collaborative efforts, we make sure we have widget makers in DeKalb County. Next slide, please. This is the phenomenal team that I have. I am just your president, so I just get the pleasure of speaking at 8 a.m. on a Saturday morning, all right? My team does the work. I have a phenomenal team. And so because we're talking about South DeKalb, I want to make mention of one particular team member. I don't know if you can see it, but it's a brother by the name of Jeffrey Lofton. He is our Equitable Economic Development Manager. So what does that mean? We recognize here in DeKalb County we have a huge opportunity in South DeKalb. Huge opportunity for economic development and growth. We created a position to say, hey, Jeffrey, you're responsible for that. Each and every day we want you to live and breathe DeKalb County, South DeKalb County, all right? So that's what he does. listen, collaboration, building partnerships so that we can see economic development. Because I tell you, to the commissioner's point, none of this happens without collaboration and teamwork. This is a team effort, folks. The community, these fine folks over here, Larry, Sylvia, they are all collaboration, and this is necessary for economic development. So that's what that guy represents for South DeKalb. So I just want to make note of that. Next slide. Targeted industry, so this is a big one. So great organization, we do a lot of great things, but we do have a guiding star, and we do have a strategic plan. And in that strategic plan, it gives out a list of things that we should accomplish and should achieve as an organization. It's about 130 pages. I know it front and back. But we have 5 targeting industries within that plan. And so because of the efforts that we took to devise this plan, we have these 5 target industries. I want to make note of those. Advanced manufacturing, warehouse and distribution, healthcare, headquarters and offices, and film and digital entertainment. And I'm going to shout out my friends from the city of Tucker in here to that very first one. Advanced manufacturing is a big one. So remember when I spoke to collaboration with our 13 cities in the name of economic development, Mr. John McHenry in the back, wave your hand, John, they need to see you. John is back there. So John McHenry from the city of Tucker, in collaboration with South DeKalb, we delivered an expansion project, huge expansion project in DeKalb County from Pepsi Company. All right, you're talking about a Fortune 50 company that was based in DeKalb County, that looked at other sites across our beautiful country, but we worked in collaboration to make sure that they had the workforce and that they had what they needed to expand here in DeKalb County, and they chose to remain here in DeKalb County. It's a huge project, so I was just going to bring that to the forefront again to collaboration.
And I have to pop in here because water capacity, water and sewer capacity was one of the major issues.
Correct.
And what we did in DeKalb, because in all honesty, it shouldn't be the fault of other people, that honestly over the years, we have not had CIP, capital improvement plans that would put us where we ought to be. So what we did was bridge the gap. So through your hard work, we were able to come in and the county met Pepsi halfway, and we paid 50% of the water sewer capacity dollars necessary to bring the project online, because wasn't it about a $30 million project or more?
Correct, it was more than that.
It was, yes. So these are the type things that we have to do to make things happen. And thank you, John, for coming.
Next slide, please. All right, so this is a brief overview of just what project management looks like. What is a project, the players, the stakeholders, the partners, and this is, again, this is a team effort. I mean, we work with Georgia Power. They are an economic development player, a huge player in the state of Georgia. We work with the state of Georgia and their economic development office. This is all necessary to make these things happen. Next slide, please. All right, incentives and financing tools. So at the South DeKalb, we are a unique organization in that we have the authority to utilize certain tools in the name of economic development. The more popular tool that is often mentioned would be property tax abatements, or what we call bond for titles. That's where we can really discount the property taxes of certain projects that meet a certain criteria, and that criteria is a whole list of criteria that we have as an organization that we look at. But if you meet those criteria, we can discount your property taxes. But I'll tell you, the bar begins at $10 million, a $10 million new project. Another tool that we have is tax increment financing. So you might say, what is tax increment financing? So that we, in the state of Georgia, we call those TADs. So that's a tax allocation district. So think, how do you turn a 138-acre site that was a former steel mill into a mixed-use development that we now call Atlantic Station? That's a tax allocation district. How do you turn a portion of an unused parking lot in DeKalb County into a huge community amenity called Soccer in the Streets, a tax allocation district? We have 6 within DeKalb County. Under the purview of the South DeKalb, we manage 3 of those tax allocation districts, 2 of which are in DeKalb County. One is actually right down the road here, and then we have another one on Memorial Drive. But that's not it, folks. We are going to do more in DeKalb County, and we are actually going to release an RFQ, which is a request for qualifications and proposals, to provide assistance to us to create a Southwest DeKalb tax allocation district. So this is all important.
Yes, yes. And let me say, I had to pop up because I was getting excited, because with our tax allocation district, we have asked specifically in order to give us the tools that we need to redevelop South DeKalb Mall and the South DeKalb corridor along Candler Road for a tax allocation district as well as an opportunity zone to be created, because these are valuable tools for developers when they make decisions to come into your community. So I couldn't be more excited about that, Dorian.
Thank you, Commissioner. But again, these are all just single tools, and some projects require certain tools. You just have to make sure you have a robust toolkit, and I think we do here at the South DeKalb. We're always growing it. The next one is a job tax credit. Is literally what it sounds like. It's a tax credit, state income tax credit for every job you create within the state of Georgia. We're looking to make this tool more robust here in DeKalb County, and we've recently applied for this tool to be applied here along this actual corridor. So we're waiting and we're crossing our fingers and hope that the state of Georgia approves that application. So that's called a state opportunity zone. We also have revolving loan funds. So we spoke to brownfields. Brownfields are a huge deal. So that's the thing. A former gas station that had gas underneath the ground. It's ugly down there. No one wants to develop that. You can't really just turn that into a multifamily without typically incentives. And that's where the Brownfield Revolving Loans Fund comes from. And I'm happy to announce through the South DeKalb, we actually got the largest EPA reward in DeKalb County's history at $2.5 million last year. So they believe in DeKalb County. They are happy with the work we've been able to do. We recently supported the Pullman Yards project. And if you don't know about it, you should check it out. It's in Kirkwood neighborhood down that way. But if not for these tools, we would not see economic development in some of these more challenging areas. Next slide, please. More incentives. Next slide, please. But I do want to point to one thing, because Commissioner mentioned earlier, CIDs are important. All right, they are hugely important. Christopher Saunders is here in the crowd. He's a CID guy. He's my guy, does great work here in DeKalb County. But CIDs are really the business community participating in a meaningful way in improving the infrastructure of that said community. So think all of that construction you see along the perimeter at 285 and 400. That CID is really a part of that improvement. All right, DeKalb Entertainment Commission. This is a huge one, but again, I got to be brief. We also house the DeKalb Entertainment Commission within the South DeKalb. So what is that? We were at the forefront of determining and making, again, what I said earlier. When businesses come, they want it to be easy. Time is money. So when we saw the opportunity for film and entertainment here in DeKalb County, what do? The folks had the wherewithal to create the DeKalb Entertainment Commission, and that's housed within my shop. We make it easy. Permitting is easy. We market sites for filming. And that's why, folks, in DeKalb County, this time next year, we should have more soundstage space in DeKalb County than any place else in the world. And a lot of people don't know that, and that's a huge deal. And it's really the impetus of this. So the DeKalb Entertainment Commission is huge. We have more to do, I'll tell you that. So again, going back to that workforce, we want to make sure that the workforce here in DeKalb County can plug into these jobs. Why not? They're here, let's leverage it. All right, next slide. All right, so what does that all mean? All of this collaboration, all of these fine folks. So here at the South DeKalb, these are the jobs that we've touched and we've created last year alone. So last year, 6,786 new jobs here in DeKalb County. That's a huge deal, 6,786. Let me put that into context. We got a lot of counties and a lot of areas in the state of Georgia. Some municipalities are happy with 6 new jobs. 6. We ain't just everybody. So 6,786 new jobs is phenomenal. 621 retained jobs. And then I think that's
836.5 million new investment.
836 in new investments. So what we spoke to earlier, what Aaron spoke to, is that these add to the tax, this adds to the tax base, all right? And of that, I'm proud to say 400 million of that represents the largest economic development project in South DeKalb's history, right down the way here at Shadowbox Studio, and 2,500 jobs. So you're talking about 400 million in 1 year for one particular project. That's huge. And I mentioned some of it down here. And I think that ends, but again, collaboration without, and this would not happen without the good folks in this room and my county commissioners and their support and collaboration. Trust me, it won't without this collaboration we have. And I do want to make one more note before I get out of here. So I'm gonna call him out. Cedric, how many counties are in the state of Georgia?
One.
They helped you. They say they're 159. They already helped you. I would have to call you out, our planning director. 159 counties in the state of Georgia, folks. Every single year, DCA, Department of Community Affairs, releases this list that tiers all the counties that say, hey, you're a pretty good county, you're a really good county, you need some help. And the metrics are job, labor market, employment growth, just all of these good metrics. And they're tiered. So you want to be in tier 1. Tier 1 says you have a strong economy and you are really doing a good job within your county. For the first time, I think ever, DeKalb County made tier 1. There are only 6 other counties within tier 1. So we got 159. Less than 10% sit within tier 1 and DeKalb County is 1. So I say that to say, if we're doing a good job, and we will continue to do a good job, and now the focus is going to be on South DeKalb, and how do we solve for that? So I'm going to call my guy out before I get off this floor. Jeffrey just walked in. Yes, look at him in the back. That's your guy. That is an amazing individual, and he is going to be a part of this transformation. So thank you all for the time. I'm going to sit down.
Okay, thank you so much. And you can see there's good people here in DeKalb County who get excited. Now, one of the things that wasn't said, and again, I believe in teachable moments, is P3s, public-private partnerships. Because even when it came to PepsiCo, it was a P3, a public-private partnership. And I truly believe that as we seek to create the communities we want, there will be the need to create more P3s. You will see some, of course, the enabling legislation for us to do so came through the Capitol, but you will see a more strategic effort, I do believe, here in DeKalb County, because at this moment we are creating a framework around P3s, but they are nothing new. It's just that we are now beginning to really fully take advantage of all the tools in the toolbox. And I also wanted to acknowledge Ms. Whitney McGinnis from the DeKalb County School Board. You did not go unnoticed when you came in. I also see Ms. Teresa Hardy, who is a part of DeKalb County. You work in so many different capacities as a consultant as well. And I did want to acknowledge my husband and granddaughter, because this morning it was quite an ordeal for us to get her poodled and fluffed and out of the house, and she has been absolutely quiet in the back, so congratulations. Now, at this time, we're going to go straight into the Q&A because I know that you all have some questions. There had been a microphone. There are microphones on each side. At this time, if you have a burning question as it relates to the presentation, and before we do this, let's give these hardworking folks a hand. You guys truly mean a lot to me. In DeKalb, I can truly say that we have great people, and greatness is right at hand. So I get very excited. So at this time, if there's questions, feel free to come to the microphone, and we will certainly entertain them at this time.
Before you ask the question, I want to answer the question that was asked during the presentation. Someone asked when the District 3 slide was up, they asked where is Meridian, Decatur, and it's located on Cook Road off of Flat Shoals Road.
My name is Ishmael Hassan. I'm a 46-year DeKalb County resident, owner of 2 businesses here. In the planning that I'm hearing, I wanted to share some of my data. The tallest building in South DeKalb is the jail. We don't have any office space. If we wanted to bring hundreds of jobs here, we don't have an office building that could house hundreds of jobs. We also are discussing improving Candler Road. Candler Road has 18 gas stations, 6 liquor stores, 10 tire shops, 7 low-budget hotels, 17 hot wing places. All the real estate is gone on Candler Road. What I'm seeing when I ride around in different communities is you go to Conyers, you go to Locust Grove, McDonough, 75, 85 through downtown. Community development is when you build along the highway, as we see, you create businesses along the highway. People will get off the highway and businesses start to develop out in the community. I don't understand why we're not seeing that in South DeKalb. We're given a lot of accolades, but when I ride to other communities, I see right along the highway, lots of businesses being developed. I see office space. DeKalb County, South DeKalb, we don't have office space. There's no business, no building in South DeKalb that could house 400 jobs. No business. Okay, also, there's 175 acres for sale at the intersection of 285 and I-20. What are we going to do to secure that land and develop it? Another point I want to
And
point
hold
out.
on, what I want us to do, we first of all, you're in the right place today for a blessing, because I came to get us straight in many ways. We have not because we own not. It is time for us to honestly, and I commend you for being a business owner, but let's be clear, people look at government for the things that they often cannot do for themselves. When
Okay,
you
can I
cannot-
finish
hold
making
on.
my point, though? I got a
No,
lot of,
I want us to
I
take
didn't
them.
finish the data, though. I didn't give you all the data.
We're going to take this one by one because you put a lot of things out there, so now you have to give us the opportunity to respond to them, and then you can move forward with your data, but we do have to be conscious of time because we have a lot of people.
I understand.
But let me be very clear in saying that when it comes to ownership of businesses, when they come forward and you go out there, you know, one of the things that I've not done when they have approached me, because I specifically asked for the Chipotle that you now see on Wesley Chapel. A developer came to me and said, you know, I want to bring a restaurant. I said, well, if it sells fried chicken, fried rice, or burgers, we don't want it. Give me a different option. So as leaders, we have to ask. But again, that was an external company from a different state that brought into DeKalb County what we wanted, but there is no reason anyone in this room could not have approached Chipotle, went through the vetting process, and owned and managed the restaurant.
One restaurant is not enough for South DeKalb. We need multiple. We need lots.
So we have to
need
reinvent that
multiple.
model. So that's why we're here today, to have the conversation, so any one of you here can own a business and bring it to South DeKalb. What has happened previously as it relates to gas stations, service stations, liquor stores, I can personally say that since being on the Board of Commissioners, I have not voted to bring one in. So, but for the sins of the fathers, let's be clear, let's put everything where it belongs, we wouldn't be where we are. So what you have to do at some point is make a clear break and have a vision and move forward.
DeKalb Development Authority owns the land at Stonecrest. Stonecrest has been a mall for 22 years. Why aren't we seeing office buildings, mixed-use development around that mall? We have 22 years later, hundreds of acres of land sitting right around Stonecrest Mall that is vacant. The other thing that I want you to know, when you leave Stonecrest Mall all the way to downtown, from La Vista Road all the way to Camp Creek, there's not but 2 sit-down restaurants, Red Lobster on Calla Road, Applebee's on Memorial Drive.
And honestly,
chain
we're waiting for
restaurants.
people to see the value in us. We can own restaurants.
Right, but 45 years of 175 acres sitting at a major interchange with county commissioners being elected each year after each year. The development plan doesn't seem big enough for the whole South DeKalb. Understandable, we have projects here, projects there. We need development along the whole I-20 corridor from Stonecrest back to East Atlanta, where we see the cutoff line at. That's a bigger plan for South DeKalb. Individual projects, let's say Dunwood has probably gotten $800 million in road projects. We're talking about just $800 million in a couple development projects here. Why can't we see the development as we see in McDonough? You ride the Locust Grove, you see mass mixed-use development right off the highways. That brings people out into your community.
And
tax
I have
revenue.
explained to you, and let's be clear, development is spurred by 2 things, rooftops and median household incomes. Throughout DeKalb, where we have rooftops, we often don't have the median household income to sustain certain types of businesses. So what you are seeing now is walking backwards and trying to get us where we need to be in many instances. But never confuse it. DeKalb County government was not created to develop per se. We are not in the housing business. We have housing partners. We have community development block grants that can be used to fund programs that create housing, but it takes a developer to come to the table to build those properties. Through P3s, we can begin to put out RFQs, requests for quotes, to actually bring projects online. But even when we talk about Stonecrest, we also have to be very cautious because we have 12 different municipalities in DeKalb County. The city of Stonecrest is its own municipality. I will stand here and without equivocation, I say what I say. When Stonecrest Mall was built, it was actually built on an outdated model. But it had taken 10 years to get it from ideation to creation. So if you go there now and you walk through the mall, truth is, many of the flagship stores are gone. Do you think that that's going to lend well for me to go out and recruit when you see a decline? So what we have to do is be very cautious in how we speak and what we say when we say it, because there is a lot of work that has to be done. We are here for the job. These people do the job and the yeoman's work every day. And the one thing that I will say to you is, it's not as easy as just standing there. The 178 acres that you speak of, it is currently under contract with an individual. That's something you know not. That has been a 3-year process that is ongoing in order to secure it. So you make sure you get my card, and I'm happy to have the conversation. We're going to go to the next question because it's not as simple as what you may say, but I really understand how you feel, and I have the exact same passion that you do.
We see it with the other communities. Why is it not so simple for DeKalb, but other communities are making it happen?
Okay. Yes, go right ahead.
Hi, good morning. My name is Marsha Tucker, and I've been in this community, as a matter of fact, I live around the corner. Glad to have Commissioner Lorraine Johnson helping us with some things in our community. However, I'm considered as being in a no-man land, because I say that because between Glenwood, from like 2nd Avenue all the way up to 285, and from Kennel Road, from Memorial Drive all the way really to I-20, there have been a lot of things that we haven't gotten, you know, and for instance, there's been a house that was across the street from us for about 20-some years, and, you know, Commissioner Lorraine Johnson, she helped us get that torn down. But I'm just looking at all the dilapidated buildings in this area, and I don't know what the plan is for that. You know, I'm glad to hear South DeKalb is going to be built up, but like I say, I feel like we're just in a pocket of a no-man land. You know, that we're just being overlooked of getting some things done. So maybe there is something on the planning committee for us, but again, should developers come just right up and down in this area? Or are they looking at, well, ain't nothing happening here, but by just looking at the buildings? But if you go over in our community, you see these big, large houses and all that stuff where our taxes are going up more and more. But, you know, as far as development, I don't know what's on the plan for that, so maybe you all could help us with it.
Understood, and that's why in 2019, I actually am the commissioner who provided the gap funding for the Land Bank Authority. Now, I'm not sure how familiar folk are with land banks, but land banks have the capacity to take abated properties, cleanse the title, and then reintroduce them to the community so that they can be purchased and go into productive use and back on our tax rolls. And truth is, again, you know, when you look at where we are, but for the sins, and I don't want to say that. Coming online in 2019, we demolished 256 structures. You don't have 256 abated properties that does not occur over decades. It takes decades for a property to reach the point of needing to be knocked down. That I cannot speak on. But I do understand, and I'm extremely sympathetic to the fact that too many people in DeKalb live around properties that need to be demolished. And what you see as it relates to code enforcement and our aesthetics has a great deal to do with economic development, just as much as the income. So, you know, again, I often say I can't legislate or mandate morality and decency. I'm often behind cars and I see an individual drop paper out of the window. This is a learned behavior. No one in my house does it, but it has a direct reflection and effect on me. So we do have to have these conversations. And, you know, the thing that often bothers me most is no one in here does what we talk about.
Okay.
There's not a person in this room, I venture to say, that's a part of the problem, but we all have to be a part of the solution. So do understand that we are seeing the change. There is a lot of interest now in South and unincorporated DeKalb. If you live along the Tony Valley area, along Candler Road, people are offering to buy your houses every day because the communities are changing. And with those changes particularly, gentrification brings higher incomes. Higher income and rooftops bring businesses. And I would say in the next 5 to 10 years, it won't be overnight. We are going to see a different DeKalb.
I guess my main thing is, you know, by developers want to bring more businesses in this area, and they see a lot of dilapidated buildings like old restaurants and stuff, you know, just still standing. Is that going to be something to entice them to want to come on over here, or really just continue to bypass us?
At the rate, based upon our current model, we have been able to demolish on average, and we did lose some traction during COVID because for a full year there were no demolitions, but we have been able to demolish it generally around 250 buildings, but we have a lot of buildings online to be demolished, and many are in realm right now in attorneys' chambers waiting for a final vote. And feel free, any of the panelists, to jump in as well, and Commissioner Terry, get you a microphone.
Yes, I want to jump in a little bit on this. We are in long-range planning working on a revitalization plan, and with that revitalization plan, we will be reaching out and having meetings with the community to discuss blight, to discuss sidewalks, or whatever issues you're having in your neighborhood. We want to hear those things from you because we're creating this plan to enhance the neighborhoods. And so sometime this year, you'll be hearing from us. So if you did not sign in, I encourage you to sign in. We will be taking that information, and we will be sending that information out to you when we start having these revitalization meetings.
Yes, and HOAs also play a really critical role in the local community and making sure that your neighbors' homes are decent and in order, because even homes in DeKalb in certain communities have a great deal of delayed maintenance. And I have even been present on Saturdays where we've gone into communities and totally transformed a home. And it's unfortunate, but sometimes that's what we must do as neighbors. And yes, go right ahead, Representative Evans, and then we'll go to the other side.
Thank you so much. I want to just thank both of you so much and all of you with our Planning Commission Decide DeKalb for this today. I'm Representative Becky Evans. I'm a 32-year resident now of DeKalb County. And I have a point to make, quick point, and a question to ask. So the point to make is I want all of us to think big picture on development. Atlanta is poised to be a climate refuge city in the next 50 years as sea levels rise. We're on a plateau, 1,000 feet, above sea level. And so I believe in smart growth. I know a lot of people in this room believe in smart growth, and that means density around transit, and that means, providing paths to nature among our development, a way connecting things. So I want us to all be thinking about these things for the future of our state and our country and for our children. So that's just one quick point I want to make. The other one is about infrastructure. I now in my new district, I do have the Snap Finger wastewater treatment plant. It's just right there. And I actually want to ask you, when did it come online? And then can you give an example of this example with Pepsi when you said the county paid half and they paid, what did you pay half for? Just explain that, just so we can understand that a little better.
Okay. I know that the Snap Finger, and I'm not sure if anyone is here specifically from our wastewater treatment facility, but I do believe that the construction began around 2017. However, it had been in the works for many years before that. It is actually under testing at this moment. Yes, the plant will be complete in 2020.
Okay, so I didn't even know that. So it's not online
This
at all?
fall, October 2023. We've
Okay.
said it so long, I'm like, it is 2023.
Right.
So it will literally be complete this year, and it is right now in the beta testing phases.
Because I will say, I've talked with good friends telling them I'm coming to this discussion this morning, and they're asking, well, what about the water? And, that, in their mind, that's been, really holding DeKalb back, that we haven't had the capacity. So I'm glad to know that, but I didn't understand, so it hasn't even come online yet.
Correct.
Okay. And then as it comes online, then you'll be able to add more
Yes,
capacity.
but even with what you see now with our capacity assurance program, because it's not just snap finger, we had not had our pipes replaced, enlarged, and increased for decades. So what you're seeing in some areas, and we coordinate it with the resurfacing even of roads, is us expanding, enlarging, and increasing water sewer capacity. So larger pipes are actually going in, and it increases capacity to build homes and communities, as well as to bring businesses online. So with our capacity assurance program, as we increase water capacity in an area, we have, in some instances, lists of people that are waiting to bring businesses online, and that allows us to give them the capacity. So what you saw with Pepsi in particular is there was a need for greater water capacity. So as they went in and installed infrastructure, DeKalb County met them halfway, because that was a $260 million project, and because of the amount of jobs that it would bring to DeKalb, it was in our best interest to bring that project online and make that investment, because the returns would be so great.
That's right. I'll add to that because snap finger is the end of the line, right? That's where it gets treated, right, before it is released back into the South River. And the issue with PepsiCo, as well as the other development projects we're talking about, over 140, I think it's 140-ish projects were put on hold because there wasn't capacity, not necessarily at snap finger, but in the pipes. And if you look at the annual report from the Department of Watershed Management, our water and sewer department, the number one reason for sewer overflows is rainwater intrusion. So roots have entered the pipes, they've cracked them open. So every time it rains, the really heavy rain events, that's when we're having the real environmental destruction, as well as the environmental protection agencies saying you have to fix that. And so the good news with those delayed projects is most of them are housing projects. And that just goes back to what Commissioner Cochran-Johnson says. You need rooftops. And so this is kind of the, one step forward, two steps back kind of thing, because if we get more housing development online, more rooftops, then the commercial sector says, wow, there's more rooftops, there's more people with money. Now we're looking at our pro formas and we're saying this is a good place to invest. So the other good news is that we did vote on a $610 billion bond. I think that's one of the largest we've done in a long time, and that is going to pay for all of this work over the next 10 years. But it is underway. We've ramped it up this year even more. For mostly sewer, but also the water lines as well. It's a both and, the water pipes and, cleaning it up.
Unfortunately, everyone, we are past the 10:30 mark, and we have an hour left on the town hall, and we do need to get our other panel up here and have them start. So we will do one question on that side, and then we need to change over to part two. Now, everyone that was in line with the question, please come and see me in the back, and we will get your question down. And if we have time on the back end, we will try to answer that at that time, okay?
And if not, then you will receive a response.
Yes,
From my
thank you.
office, from the appropriate person for the question. Yes, sir, go right ahead.
Thank you for the opportunity. And Commissioner, thank you for hosting this event that edifies the community. And thank each and every one of you for showing up, because your commitment is what strengthens the community. My name is Jim Foster, and for over 20 years, I built an insurance company right here on Wesley Chapel Road, and serving. Now in my retirement years, my focus has been on helping employees to transition to becoming self-employed business owners. I'm the president of the Georgia Home-Based Business Chamber of Commerce, and that is our objective. My question around that is, what current plans exist or upcoming plans exist to provide training, education, and development for these individuals who want to improve their lifestyle, live life on their own, but realize that they cannot do that on the job because they have to get permission for everything that they want to do. They have to have their own business as a vehicle to get them there. So what provision is there in place or can be put in place for this? I had two questions, so I could combine them in one in the interest of time. Also, having been in the insurance business, I understand the difficulties and the challenges that minorities have when it comes to bonding, securing bonding. There's a slew of projects that we talk about here. And so I had the opportunity of bringing my friend this morning, who is one of the very few minority that has bonding capabilities for multi-million-dollar projects. Mr. Early, is he here? So I wanted to introduce him, and so that we can be positioned to not just be on the side looking on, but get in the game to improve the lives of everyone involved.
Understood. And I would say to your friend, definitely speak with Mr. DeBar, because when it comes to bonding capacity, I would think that that would be under his purview. And when you talk about giving resources and services to individuals, are you talking about current business owners?
Both existing business owners and aspiring business owners.
Understood. And let me say that just South DeKalb Development Authority, all of those wraparound services, whether it's from ideation to the development of a business plan, it all starts there. Also, if you'll go to my website on an annual basis, I host the Small Business Summit. And at that summit, if you've ever been, we teach you all things business. When you walk out of the door, you understand everything from your opportunity zones to your community improvement districts to also the different forms of businesses that you can start, from LLCs to corporations, you name it. So the resources are there, but there often is a lack of knowledge of what we do. So getting our newsletters and being aware is really going to be important, but I will give you my card and make sure that you are receiving it. And feel free to reach out to us, and anytime I receive an email, I will pair you within 24 hours with anyone that you need in DeKalb.
If I might just jump in, people who are in business, they are great at their craft, they're great at what they do, their skills and all of that, but putting it on a business platform, they're sadly lacking in the knowledge of how to do it, developing the programs and stuff like that. And what I found is that many of the training programs around just touches the surface. It doesn't go skin deep enough so that a person can walk out of a program and get ready to turn their key and open their door the next day. So that is what I want to bring to the community.
So are you saying you want to bring it? Because we do it. Now, you know, and that's one of the things, and that always bothers me when folk don't know what we do. We do it, but if that's something that you do, then introduce yourself to the people. We want you to be successful as well. But we have several programs. I've sponsored 3 that are 4 to 6 month programs. We teach you everything from starting with the registration of your trade name to the registration of your business name through GoDaddy. We walk you through every step. So no, we aren't going to send you out there blindly, but in order to receive and eat, you have to sit at the table. So today we offer you that seat. I'm pulling back the chair, you come and sit. And we'll walk you through those programs. But I also want to acknowledge our tax commissioner, Mr. Irvin Johnson. Thank you for coming out this morning. Okay? And at this time, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the panel members because they have lives. And I know that we have a graduation of a daughter and several other things. And let's give a round of applause to those who have already come this morning And thank you all so much for your time and for the work you're doing here in DeKalb. You know, there's just a lot of work to be done. The first person that we have is Mr. Ryan Gravel. He is an urban designer, author, and speaker, and he is the owner of Six Pitch Corporation. Ms. Carrie Roca, Interim Chief Capital Officer for the Metro Atlanta Rapid Transit Authority. Mr. Stephen McCauley, President of McCauley Investments. And if you all will come forward at this time, we also have Mr. Eric Clarkston. He is the Economic Development Specialist with the Pendleton Group, who will also be joining us for this conversation. Now, this particular part of the conversation will shift us directly to South DeKalb Mall. Of course, South DeKalb Mall is held by 3 commissioners, technically. Myself, Commissioner Larry Johnson, and Commissioner Terry. We all converge there. Now, over the years, of course, I firmly believe that South DeKalb is the gateway. South DeKalb Mall is the gateway to South DeKalb. If we transform South DeKalb Mall, all of the development that you want to see will begin, because we will have an economic center. Beyond that, we have with us today MARTA, because when we negotiated the 15th Amendment for MARTA, we are to receive 2 master transit hubs. One will be located at South DeKalb Mall, the other to be located at Stonecrest. Those 2 transit hubs will also be key, because we will create the transportation and the traffic that is necessary. So at this time, I do know that Mr. McCauley as well as Mr. Gravel both have other engagements. So to just give a little bit of background, and I will say that Ryan Gravel is currently working on a site-specific plan, and Mr. McCauley is currently the developer that is working alongside NAMDAR. For any of you who may not know, for 17 years, South DeKalb Mall was held by a separate entity, and it was transferred in December of 2021, and the deal was consummated during the top part of January in 2022. I approached them after they took acquisition of the mall to find out what were their plans for this important structure that sits here that is in need of revitalization. And after many conversations, they agreed that they are open to the revitalization and a formal development plan. So these are the 2 individuals who have been engaged by myself as well as NAMDAR. So I'll go ahead, Mr. McCauley. I see you have the microphone, and let you get started.
Thank you, Commissioner. Can you hear me? Is it working? It's working. Okay, good. Thank you, Commissioner. Really appreciate the invitation, and very excited that so many people are interested and came out on a Saturday morning. That's impressive. So as the Commissioner said, I approached NAMDAR the end of last year to try to convince them that the best thing to do, that they had already heard from the Commissioner, was not to leave the mall as it is, which was their intention, but to come forward and do something really special for it. Our company focuses on highly sustainable models of mixed-use, mixed-income development. It is our hope that with your help and the Commissioner's backing and her colleagues, that we will create a national model of how to redevelop an old property into something that what we hope you will endorse is an experiential destination development, regional in nature, as one of the previous panel members said. This will have a major economic impact and halo effect on the entire area. And as the Commissioner said, it truly will be a gateway to South DeKalb. That's what we hope. It'll have an investment value we estimate at the moment of about $1.2 billion. So it's a very significant project, and as I said, will be mixed use. But my goal here this morning is not to tell you what it should be or what I think it should be or what it could be. My goal here this morning is to listen to what you think it should be. What do you, the community, want the mall to be? And this is one of many, many community meetings we'll be having to listen before we start putting pen to paper. So, Commissioner, is that okay? Is that on track with?
That is absolutely fine. I will say that we have a request that will come back before the Board of Commissioners this week to engage an external agency, Pond, to begin a series of charrettes, town hall conversations, to expand upon previous conversations. But most importantly, for us to have these conversations, they will then be adopted officially, the findings, into the comprehensive plan, and they can thereafter be used and by all developers as the baseline for what the community wants. Now, based upon our initial conversation, I'm going to now go to Mr. Gravel. We held a series of conversations. Many of you in here have been a part of those conversations. And what the community has firmly expressed is a desire for mixed use. Retail, restaurants, upscale restaurants, entertainment. We've even had healthcare mentioned as a part of this overarching, as well as diverse housing offerings. Because that property is so unique and so very well situated to Interstate 20, there are a lot of efforts along the corridor at this moment. Pastor Marlon Harris presented an amazing plan to transform his entire campus that also includes housing. Also, there has been the request for green space. So what we are hearing is more in line with an Avalon, if you all are familiar with such concept. But how do we make it unique to DeKalb County? And I see Mr. Gravel, Ryan has already stood. So based upon your renderings, and I commend him because as an urban planner, he just generally gets it. Being so young to get the whole concept of the belt line, I just can't wait to see the formal vision, and we will be presenting that to you in probably about 2 weeks because he is at the end of the ideation there. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner, and I'm please chime in as I talk about this incredible opportunity. I wanted to say I am a product of DeKalb County. I grew up in Chamblee. Proud to be back, good to be here and to be working with the Commissioner on South DeKalb Mall. I remember coming down to South DeKalb for a science fair one time, way back, a long time ago, so it's good. I've been back since, but anyway, it's great to be here. And I also want to commend the work done by all the folks on the previous panel and all the organizations that they represent, Decide DeKalb, the planning department, has really set up South DeKalb Mall, has done all the groundwork to prepare South DeKalb Mall for its next chapter. And so a lot of that hard work, that heavy lift has already been done by the county. And so kudos to both commissioners and the county for setting that up. As some of the conversation was leading to, there has to be a market for that work also, for the developers to show up. And as you've seen from Mr. McCauley's interest and Namdar's interest, that interest is coming. And so I think what we're trying to do is prepare the county for this to happen and make sure that the county has identified and articulated its goals for what we want this mall to become, what we want the site to become. And then get specific about this, because a lot of the plans have been done for Candler Road or for general large areas. This is specifically for the mall property itself, looking at its specific sets of challenges and opportunities. So This is not a master plan, I also want to say that. That was something that would come next, right? So that's a much larger process with a lot of community engagement. We're just kind of putting together this concept package. We've been talking with folks in the community and other places just to make sure that we're capturing everything, but there's a lot more work ahead. But this kind of tees up that work. So we kept coming back to this idea that it's time. It's time for South DeKalb. South DeKalb's been waiting for a long time for this. I know that.
It's time.
It is time. And so we're starting that. This is, seen as a kickoff, especially for this particular corner of the county. Next slide, please.
And I have to chime in because this is an actual photo from 1968 on opening day of South DeKalb Mall. And I was amazed to say, I didn't see any black people. I see none.
I don't think there's a single one.
There's not a single one in this photo. And history is something that you have to embrace because now we are a community of black people. But this was absolutely amazing to me to see what the mall was. And I'm not sure when we came about in DeKalb. But certainly we weren't there in 1968.
So important to that, there's another big change that's happened, okay? So DeKalb County has changed significantly in that way. The world has also changed also, and the world doesn't really looking for shopping malls like this anymore. That's not where the market is headed. People are looking for more mixed-use, urban, infill, walkable districts, outside spaces. The mall itself, while it's doing decently, it's obsolete in the marketplace. And you see malls all over the nation closing, and it has nothing to do with the local population. It has to do with the lack of interest in that kind of future. And so what we're trying to do is reposition this property for that next future. And because it's such a big project, and the county has a vested interest in what happens here, then the county's leading that effort to prepare this property, that site, for that aspirational future, so that rather than being a future for somebody else, this is a next chapter of South DeKalb Mall for this community specifically, and identifying ways to make sure that that's true. So next slide, please. Thank you. The region has changed. I've talked about that. The region is going to grow enormously, 2.9 million more people in Atlanta by 2050. That's like moving more than Charlotte to Atlanta in 20 years, not doing anything about regional transportation, basically. And so the traffic and growth pressure on places like this are enormous, and that's an opportunity to capture that growth and leverage it for your own positive future outcomes. That's the idea. Next slide. And then this place has a long storied history, right? Especially over the last 40 years, and that is something to be really celebrated and articulated and defined specifically in the policies and programs and investments that the county makes to make sure that this next chapter is written for you.
And let me also say, when you talked about, the growth and as it relates to South DeKalb Mall, it is ideally located because it is 10 minutes proper from the heart of downtown.
Next slide.
So if you live along the Candler Road corridor and you travel off into any of the side communities, you will see gentrification at its best. Now, I define gentrification as a brick house that has been painted and now it has a colorful door. And that's generally what, and I create my own definitions in DeKalb. Let's be clear. I'm very clear on what I see. And you are seeing the gentrification take place. And as you see that, it brings the higher incomes. And you will now begin to see the retail because it is truly a numbers game. So I didn't want to steal your thunder there, but I just had to say that because
you just had to do it anyway, because I got a map. The map is coming up. You'll see it. Thank you. I love working with you. It's great. It's a lot of fun. Stepping back, we looked at a lot of national models. So the small transformations are happening all over the world, all over the country, sorry. This is a project actually in California outside of Sacramento. It's a NAMDAR mall. So NAMDAR is a partner, is the owner of South DeKalb Mall. They are partnering with developers in other places, redeveloping their malls in the similar kinds of way that we might imagine South DeKalb being renovated. They end up being the land partner, and then there's developers coming in to build the different pieces of it. In this case, the city of Citrus Heights led the development plan, the specifics, but basically a small area master plan for the mall, and NAMDAR participated in that with other developers. So you can see how you could start to lock in the aspects of this project that make sure that it supports the county goals, community's goals. Next slide. This is a project in Dallas, suburban Dallas, called Redbird. Similar demographic community, but also being reclaimed, repurposed, similar kinds of ways. You can see that the infrastructure has to be laid down first, so those big parking lots get divided with new streets that set up pad sites for future vertical development for multifamily, new retail, walkable street-level retail, public spaces, hotels, office, whatever that market is suitable for that market at that time. Next slide. And then, of course, locally, all the malls, well, almost all the malls in Metro Atlanta are beginning to be reimagined. This is an image of North DeKalb Mall. Really great project by Edens, which is a potential, that's the kind of thing that we want to be looking at for this. Next slide. And then, of course, Ponce City Market, which is a totally different kind of mall, but very much a destination, a very specific kind of thing. This is the kind of place that people are really looking for, where the market is really looking for. So if you really want successful businesses to lift the community, you need to create places that do this. Now, not everybody has an old Sears building. I don't mean that. I just mean creating those kind of interesting, dynamic, walkable, public, civic kind of spaces within what is essentially a mall with mixed-use development. Next slide. Fortunately, all of the lessons learned from all these case studies, both nationally and locally, they begin to articulate the same things that we've been hearing from the community, that we want to create a destination, that we want open public spaces, dynamic food and beverage options, I can't quite read this.
Retail shops.
Eclectic mix of national brands and local boutiques.
Shopping and dining,
Yep.
upscale modern experience, eclectic mix of national brands and local boutiques, create a contemporary and flexible workspace design, energy efficiency, environmentally friendly, ample parking, dynamic mix of luxury apartments and townhomes with lots of amenities and upscale finishes, structured parking, include ample green space and environmentally functional design that is aesthetically pleasing and engaging to enhance the consumer experience and sense of place.
It's not that surprising that other properties across the nation that are being reclaimed in our current market are tapping into what those communities want, and that this community is no different and wants those similar kinds of things. There will be specific differences, of course, that can be articulated through a longer process. But overall, it's the same thing. What the market is trying to give you is what the community really wants. And it's what the mall cannot currently offer in its current state. Next slide. Here's the map. So you can see in Metro Atlanta, South DeKalb Mall really is strategically positioned. You can see why there was a mall built there originally. It is at the confluence of both I-20 and 285. Candler Road goes directly into the heart of Decatur, of course, and you have access to the entire region. It's the most logically placed mall maybe in the region, just from a physical infrastructure standpoint. So you can see why it is there. If you go to the next slide, you see at a local level what great access the property has to everything around it. And of course, the reality of why it hasn't yet been redeveloped is not going to be a surprise to anybody here. But you can see, as was mentioned earlier, the market is changing. People are coming here. It's time, right? And so we're going to prepare for that. Next slide. We've been looking at the site conditions of the mall. So we're getting specific on the mall property itself and making some recommendations about as the county and developer partners start to look at how to transform the mall, the kinds of things that we need to be thinking about and be aware of going into that might not have been identified in the broader plans along Candler Road or other parts of the county. So specific things about the site conditions. The mall itself is in pretty decent physical condition, but obviously obsolete in the marketplace, has no exterior really front at all. The front door is very small and Next slide. The giant parking lots out front are actually dimensioned pretty appropriately for new walkable blocks. The drives that crisscross the parking lot actually line up reasonably well to form future streets. And if they were, developed, and then you could have new buildings built in the parking lot, you've got garage parking to replace the current surface parking. There's got some phasing and staging in there to happen, but the mall itself, the position of it in the land actually works pretty well. The fact that it's sunken below Candler Road actually works well, because then the new buildings that would face Candler Road can have a couple layers of underground parking and before the street level retail facing Candler Road. So all of that works out pretty well. And we will, articulating these things in this report, and so there's more to be seen. I'm not sharing all of that with you today, but next slide. There is a concept plan kind of forming. Again, this is not a master plan. This is just a plan that begins to reflect some of these recommendations. You can see this is the existing mall. So the dimension between Candler Road and that is about the size of an urban block. There's replacement parking. There's questions about if the mall were to stay, and at least in the phase 1, but ultimately may disappear in some future phase 2. That's not a decision that we're making. It's just the kinds of conversations that need to be being had. Public space, those civic walkable places. As you know, you may know, all the entire site drains all the stormwater through those big giant parking lots down to the creek, and that washes out the downstream properties. And so making sure that the county's looking at the stormwater implications for holding onto that water, preserving capacity for infrastructure downstream, all the green infrastructure stuff that can happen as part of that. So those are the kinds of things that we're capturing in this plan. Next slide. And then articulating what that might look like, which is mostly inspirational images from other places. So these are other mall transformations, other developments in other cities, but that reflect the specific set of opportunities that we've identified for South DeKalb Mall. And it's hard to see these, but again, we'll see a lot more next time. Next slide. And then articulating how we might achieve that. And again, while the redevelopment itself is fairly straightforward if you're in the real estate development business like Mr. McCauley or others, or Namdar, what the county's interested in is making sure that this development includes and reflects and supports the community at large of this part of the county. And so articulating ways that can happen. If there may be a tax allocation district, for example, how is that set up to support this community? Other investments like streetscapes, stormwater, all of those kinds of things are opportunities for the county to shape who this is for and who it benefits and who's making those decisions and all that. And of course, South DeKalb can support and is standing ready to support the local, small Black and brown businesses that might be part of this. So articulating all those kinds of things in this report, really just creating a roadmap a bit for the next, since now I've lost my train of thought, but you get it.
Well, for those that come behind us.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Anything else that I've missed, Commissioner?
Oh, no, and I do know that, there's time sensitivity here, so anyone who needs to remove themselves, please feel free to do so.
I will just apologize in advance. Today is my daughter's 18th birthday, my only daughter. She's graduating from Midtown High School. She's going to go to UGA next winter. We're having a big summer lunch, big family lunch today. So if I leave, that's why, but I'm sorry.
I understand, and thank you. Working with this man has been absolutely amazing. It's just a great thing to bring the right people to the table to have the conversation who have vision, because, for lack of vision, people perish, and we don't want that here in DeKalb. So with that being said, I'd like to hear from our MARTA representative, because, of course, as we talk transition, we must talk transportation. We have been warned in 2019 when I took office, the conversation was had of the growth that is expected. Our roadways no longer facilitate that. We've got to get out of cars. We are going to need to increase public transit, and it has to make sense. So if you will, I would welcome you at this point. And our former mayor of Chamblee, Eric, he's just here for moral support, but he's also a very valuable developer. So you have free reign to take the mic whenever you like, but I'm going to toss it to you.
Sure. Thank you, Commissioner. My name is Carrie Rocha. I'm the Interim Chief Capital Officer at MARTA, and I'm thrilled to be here. And I'm very pleased to hear Commissioner recognize the importance of infrastructure and transportation, in particular in developments like this. You know, MARTA is very supportive of all of the work that you have done here in DeKalb, and again, we're pleased to be part of the conversation. We've been working very hard to plan a transit hub that meets all of the mobility needs for this community. We have a flexible and context-sensitive design that we're trying to put in place, and working on solutions that involve our stakeholders and that also fit the physical setting of where we're placing it. So we are working to leverage technology and make sure the services that we have, whether it's local bus or BRT or other high-capacity modes, that transit hub will serve all of those needs. And also thinking about the first and last mile connectivity. So that connectivity is really important. We can get you to that transit hub, but making sure all of the pathways, whether it be by scooter or by pedestrian or by bus or by other modes, that connectivity happens and gets you to where you're trying to get to. Let's see, other considerations that we make in the project planning process right now, we're looking at the number of routes that we plan to have converge here, and that leads into the number of bus bays, how many vehicles we can accommodate, what our charging needs are, because we are moving into an electric vehicle sort of atmosphere, so making sure that we plan now for what those needs are ahead of time, and that involves the layout of the station itself or the hub. Access for bus, again, versus car, so kiss and ride opportunities, being able to make those connections, again, as I mentioned, for pedestrians is very, very important. Looking at the different grades, and as we've seen throughout the property, there are a lot of grade differentials, so making sure that the access is appropriate for our vehicles. Traffic control, looking at non-bus functions, so any of the support employees and police precinct and all of those elements that go into planning. So we're very excited, as I mentioned, you know, this facility will contain waiting areas, restrooms, operator facilities, and outdoor space that can possibly be programmed in the future, which really fits in, again, to the conversation that we've had here this morning. Lastly, we do look at safety and security, and how we lay out our hubs is very, very important to keep our passengers and our customers safe and provide emergency access. So in terms of the process, and I think this is probably the thing that I get a lot of questions on, you know, we go through a planning process, a very intensive planning process, and right now we're wrapping up the environmental part of this process. We're at a 30% design phase, and we'll be moving into final design. Obviously, right away, and the procurement of that of the property will be very important moving forward, and we do plan to bring that to our board sometime later this year. And then, obviously, we go through a final design phase, we go through a procurement for a contractor, and then the construction phase, and then ribbon cutting. So we look forward to that. We will be doing, I do want to mention, we will be doing some public engagement as we move forward and really get through this environmental phase. So right now we have a 30% design, and 30% really means that we have the bones. We have the bones of the structure, but we will be looking for public input into what the facility actually looks like, and be able to incorporate that into our final design moving forward. With that, I'll turn that back over.
Thing on? How do I turn it on? All right. How about that? There we go. All right. I got to find one that works. Good morning. As Commissioner Cochran-Johnson said, my name is Eric Clarkson. Man, it's so great to see this many people here. Y'all, it's kind of like I was sitting in the back, I was thinking as some of the conversations were going on earlier, it's like preaching to the choir, right? Y'all are the ones that are obviously involved. You got up early on a Saturday morning. You got yourselves out here. You want to be involved. But with that comes some responsibility as well. Y'all get to be the ones that, and you should be the ones that get involved and then get as much information, but talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, talk to your relatives about what you have going on. So just a little bit about myself. moved to Chamblee like 25, 26 years ago. I immediately got involved on our volunteer review boards and was one of the stakeholders in the stakeholder committee, much of what y'all are doing here, that set the vision for what Chamblee would be. Shortly after that, I got elected to the city council, spent 4 years on the city council, and I spent 16 years as the mayor in the city of Chamblee. During that time, I had a real estate broker's license. I did some work with Al Pond and Pond & Company. I'm glad to hear they're going to be doing some stuff with you. They've been very helpful in the city of Chamblee over the years. And I also worked with Mr. Lamar Wakefield and Wakefield Beasley for 7 or 8 years, doing business development with them. And you may know they developed the Avalon, they developed Battery, they developed the Forum. Some of you, great place. So to say that I have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly of real estate development would be an understatement. I've seen it all. But one of the things I do want to share with y'all that I think is so important is that you got to realize that, first of all, nothing happens overnight. I heard a very wise person say one time that elected officials need to have the courage to vote for things that they won't be around to cut a ribbon on. And a lot of us, we won't see a lot of the things that we work on and we set the vision for. Those folks in the picture in 1968, some of them may still be around, some of them may not, but they set a vision at that time, and here we are looking to reimagine that vision. So currently I work with a group called the Pendleton Group. We're a multinational firm, very few associates, but cover the world and primarily focus on a lot of economic development efforts. My role with the firm is really doing more local, looking in DeKalb County, do some work in other parts of the state of Georgia, but really focus on the metro Atlanta area. So, but what I do want to share with y'all is that it does take partnerships. I heard Commissioner Cochran-Johnson say and others that, private-public partnership, as I learned as we looked to redevelop the city of Chamblee, was critical in order to make that happen. Having partnerships, having some trust in the process, having trust in your elected officials. They do spend a lot of time. You are very, very, very fortunate to have two of the best right here that I've worked with in DeKalb County as far as commissioners, in Ted Terry and Lorraine Cochran-Johnson. And they're great. They care, but you got to have some trust, right? Be involved, trust but verify, right? But those are some of the things you got to do. Trust in the development community. There are bad, just like anything else. There's bad developers out there, there's good developers, but you got to have some trust in the process. And the other thing I'll leave you with is, I would have constituents come up to me and say, well, I don't like that part of the development. I said, well, guess what? I didn't like it either. You got to learn, and I had to learn, that you're not going to get everything you want. But it doesn't mean that just because it's better than what's there now means it's good. Heck, it could be, it could be something else that you don't want that may be better than what's there. You need, hold on for what you want, quality development, but it does take a partnership. It's also a little self-serving because Mr. McCauley has brought the Pendleton Group on board to help him with the economic development strategies and working through the ins and outs of the development in DeKalb County, and we're working on that. I believe that Stephen has built a phenomenal team. You'll get to know that as we go through the process of having more community meetings, as has been spoken about several times. And you get to know a lot more of the teams, but it is absolutely bringing the A-team to the county. And one more thing is, like, transformational projects like this don't come along all the time. And it is the gateway to South DeKalb. And it is very important for the community. So stay engaged, trust the process. Know that it is a process. That's all there's to it. And you know what? It can be painful. But at the end of the day, if you're willing to trust the process and work with your partners and stay engaged, you will end up with something that if not us sitting here, our children and our grandchildren will be very proud of.
And thank you so much for those words, because honestly, as I sit here and now I have become more of a realist. Government is the slowest moving vehicle that I've ever been a part of. It's not like corporate America. It requires a consensus. I may have an idea, it requires 4 votes. And if you have individuals who are of differing opinions, then it may go nowhere at all. But I think when we look around us, it's easy to understand what we need. And I feel that particularly in South and unincorporated DeKalb, because again, being a super district commissioner, and Commissioner Terry, grab your microphone. I just go get one and start talking. But the needs are so diverse amongst the areas, But in order for us to see the revitalization here, it's time. And I love when I received his initial slides and it said, it's time, because it's simply time. The market dictates this movement. And honestly, I sit here and in the next 5 to 10 years, I expect you to see a completely different South DeKalb. It's time. So, as we begin the formal engagement conversation where we get feedback from you, because you have to determine whether you want a town center or what the development and the density looks like. Because in certain areas, we're going to need the density. In other areas, we want to keep them rural. We want to keep the home feel, single-family residence. But you are seeing, even now as we construct, younger folk don't want single-family residences. They tend to prefer taller buildings, less work, townhomes. So my fight has been that we have what we see in other places. Because why can't we in South DeKalb have 3-story brick townhomes with rooftop pool options and outdoor kitchens? These things are all possible, and we do have the financial capacity to sustain them right here in South DeKalb. So it gives me great hope for the future, because I want our community to look like who we are. At this time, you know, I will say everyone here to my left, I watch y'all carefully. And I do believe that we have a good, diverse group of people, Mr. McCauley, who understand what's needed. And because of your involvement with so many projects that have been transformative to communities that have set the standard almost for the future, because as Ryan said, what we have here is an aspirational plan, but what used to work does not work anymore, and that's why you're seeing the slow death and the decline of traditional malls as we knew them. We have to get a new model. So with that said, I'm not going to say any more, and this time we're going to try to do this a little better. We have 15 minutes. We will take questions, and please just keep it a single question. And anything more, we may have to get back to you because we don't have infinite time here, and I do want to be very cautious.
While folks are coming up to the microphone, I did want to acknowledge something we talked about earlier with Dorian and then here in the panel, and that's that tax allocation district. Because what we were able to coordinate on with the South DeKalb, the neighborhoods surrounding the North DeKalb Mall redevelopment, is an area that doesn't just include the development, but it includes all the neighborhoods around it. And so what we're looking at is upwards of $50 million in value captured tax revenues over the next 40 years to build trails, housing, school infrastructure, economic development, parks, all surround Whitney's in the neighborhood right there. Whitney was part of that process. Literally connecting 4 different parks, 3 different schools, Little Creek Horse Farm, 6 different neighborhoods. And so when we talk about development, folks say, well, is this actually going to serve me? Is it going to serve, my neighborhood? And I think the opportunity with the tax allocation districts is we can do that. We literally can extend the fingers, as they call them, into the neighborhoods so that anyone that lives near the South DeKalb Mall hopefully one day has the ability maybe to drive, but walk, bike, take an autonomous vehicle. I don't know. That's the future, right? But that value capture right there is that investment is going right back into the community. And so that's a really exciting opportunity. All right.
I want to say thank you to this whole forum, this opportunity for us to talk about the vision that we're trying to create in our community and what we're doing in a real tangible way to move it forward. I do realize that there are some people that may be naysayers and say, well, this is just what we talk about instead of what we do. And I would have to differ with that because we are in a tangible way moving this forward. Maybe not as fast as you would like, but slow I think is good so we can get it right and get it deep and have it done so it's lasting, okay? And I think about that, and then I have a question concerning transit, but I want to talk about, because I wear 2 hats, being on the MARTA Board of Directors is one of those, but I'm also the president of the Hidden Hill Civic Association, who, as a community, has been struggling with repurposing a community that had 180 acres on it with 1,640 homes on a golf course that has closed. And when we had this conversation years ago, almost 15 years ago, about how we could repurpose that space, we had to learn how to fit it in new skin in order to make that happen. And so here we are today with development happening on that community of 30 acres being built. The golf paths that used to be having golf carts are now going to be walking trails, 130 acres in that space. And so I take that same type of approach when it comes to what we do in MARTA, all right, and how we're trying to move MARTA forward in a tangible way. All right. We often say in our community is our responsibility. We have to own it if we're going to make sure that it happens, and we do in my community and in MARTA. So what I want to talk about is Candler Road, because I have had opportunity to travel Candler Road also. I'm making a concerted effort to ride the bus throughout the MARTA system, because I want to feel the community. So I've been on the 15. I've been from one end to the other as it makes its left and right-hand turn, all right? And I've talked to the people and I've talked to the drivers.
So now we come back and we say, we need this. But now the monies aren't there, nor is the open hand, and it's very clear from MARTA that the penny that you voted on years ago will get us two things: cost of good repair and the cost of administration. It will not extend rail. That's something that we have to be very transparent about as government, so that you don't expect me to give you something that you're not going to get out of what you already have. So it's going to require a different solution. Now, I got one, but I'm not going into that. So I'm going to take transit off the table at this conversation, and I'll have another town hall on it, and we'll try to peel back the layers on that onion. But I do agree with you sorely, and that's why I wanted MARTA to be here today, because the Master Transit Hub is also planned at Stonecrest as well as South DeKalb Mall.
Absolutely, and I thank you. And I kind of knew the answer to some of those questions. I just want the people in the room to hear the conversations that we already are having about moving transit. But I do want to remind you that Indian Creek, MARTA approved $43 million to renovate Indian Creek, and that is one reason why you see such a robust development around that space. And it is transformative, and that's part of what we do to make this community better, and it will be extended. But so there's things happening right now that we're spending that penny for that we can get some mileage out of. So so she's right about that. It's going to go into some capital projects that are being done, and one of those is Indian Creek and Kensington Station. Those are a part of this. So our effort is to move transit forward in a tangible way. We will do just that. All we ask you to do is just support us in what we're going to do, because we're going to need a lot of champions that's going to help us. It's going to have to be transit champions in order for us to broaden this conversation on how we want to fund this expansion. All right? Thank you.
No, thank you.
Next question.
Oh.
Greetings.
How are you?
How you doing, to Lorraine, Cochran-Johnson? I feel like that I've had a whole lot of pastors in front of me, because normally when we say I'm getting ready to close, that means another 20 minutes. My question for most part is to Mr. McCauley. Okay, I am a resident of DeKalb County, 50 years, 4 months, 12 days. I've witnessed a transformation, a decline. Because you're talking about developing South DeKalb Mall, what I would like to see, and I'm volunteering to work with you in terms of some of the ideas, I believe also as you may have a master plan, that you may also need to have some direct input from pastors in areas. I do pastor, I'm senior pastor for First Crown of Glory Church International on 2nd Avenue. But then I'm also a rambling wreck from Georgia Tech and a hell of an engineer. So that I want to just ask you, is that possible? And if it is possible to have community people who are actually involved with you directly without not being a town forum issue. And if so, what can we do? And I'll give you my number in just a moment. I'm getting ready to close.
Thank you for coming out. And I will also say that, you know, one of the things that District 7 has done is engage our clergy in development opportunities. And I thank you for answering that call, because our churches are some of our largest institutions of financial wealth, and they can bond and they can build affordable housing. So we are actively working towards that with several pastors, and I thank you for that. And Mr. McCauley?
Definitely welcome that. If we could meet afterwards, I'll fill you in more. We do not have a master plan yet. You know, what I wanted to hear today is what does the community want? And Mr. Gravel has done a phenomenal amount of work, and through on behalf of Commissioner Cochran-Johnson. But there's also been one of the great things about this opportunity and the way we can make it happen relatively quickly is there's been so much community input over the last few years. That's what will drive it. We will follow those plans, that advice, and everything we hear from you today and in the future. It will be what you want it to be. I did hear the term Avalon earlier. I'm not sure who said that. My guess is, based on all the feedback we've heard and everything I've read from the last few years, that this will be Avalon-esque, but we're going to make it better from a planning perspective. So if for those of you who are not familiar with Avalon, who haven't been there, please go see it, because it'll give you, not in terms of the businesses, but in terms of the plan and how people move and just a feel of a mixed-use community. That's a really good one.
Yes, and also, everyone here, you should have access to me. If you write me, I will easily connect you with anyone you need to know or anyone that's been a part of this panel for necessary conversations, okay? And I guess we're now going to this side.
Hi, everyone. I am Pastor Stafford. If you are from this community, then you are definitely familiar with my dad, the late Dr. W.J. Stafford. And we were around when DeKalb County was not partnering, but using your facility to have large meetings, and we donated free. Amen. So, reparation, I'm just kidding. But so I have been a business owner in this county for 40 years and a resident for 50-something years. Not ashamed of my age, so I'm pushing 60, but I thank God for that. But I'm just stating that, first of all, I want to commend you, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, because what you're doing is different than what we've heard. And I just want to say that and leave it at that. You're saying some things that's different. I understand this is a tall order, but your movement and your conversation is definitely different than what we are used to. And I'm behind you, and I'm sure some others are really behind your efforts. So can we just take a moment, because if you're DeKalb, you know that this is different. She's different. She's different. I mean, can we just give honor where it's due? All right. But the next thing is, and I know I'm heavily involved community, even with the George Floyd, I did the We Will Breathe Again. I did those T-shirts. I did the march when Larry came and asked, can we duplicate it, replicate it, and do it again? And I did it the second time. I did everything that sponsored the march down Candler Road, the peaceful demonstration. So we're out here in the trenches, but the community has already been held together. And this is the thing that gave me a little pause, is I know we want to bring the higher income families in, and I understand when a matriarch and patriarch dies, sometimes it's a little tight, and they sell their houses or the properties to these people that are coming in, amen, with a little money to buy them. But for the most part, Tony Valley or Misty Waters or behind the mall, or some of them have really been doing their best to try to hold them together. And we don't want to feel like the code enforcement is the Gestapo. I'm just going to say it. It's like Gestapo. We don't want to feel like that they're coming in just to look, and because the consensus of the community, it looks like they're, I'm not saying they are, but it almost looks like a partnership with something else. Not saying it is, but it looks like that because they're not, it's very difficult when they come in. I'm a business owner. I've dealt with permitting 30, 40 years ago, 25 years ago, and then recently as well as 2 or 3 years ago. And it's very difficult for people like me to deal with permits. I'm just being honest. It wasn't an easy task. So if you don't have, if you're a business owner and the community isn't financially able to support you, to stay vibrant, to keep your infrastructure the way it needs to be, then where did the people who's been supporting the community, who's kept the community until keeping it so that the developers can come in and whatever, what happens to the support? And I'm not, you know, we need some, it's not what we think it is when you jump into that from this perspective. It's not, because I've jumped into it several times. So where is that help?
And let me say to you, you know, I read a lot and I watch programs that are online in other communities. And I believe it's either Clayton or Henry County, and they have a program where they invested, and we are on the last tranche of our ARP funds. I don't know where Commissioner Terry went, but they created a fund, good. And this is something that we should explore and then hold each one of us commissioners accountable for voting yes. A fund that sets aside monies for existing businesses to assist with your facade.
Thank you.
Because it doesn't do us any good to bring new businesses, and some of our old businesses are in the condition that they are.
In trouble. They need help.
And I know that. And to those business owners that have been here in this community for so long, I applaud you.
Thank you.
Because I know it's difficult. And, you know, in terms of where businesses are, and another gentleman who talked about businesses having the support they need. In 2021, we set aside initially $10 million with the expectation of funding up to 30 for small businesses as a result of COVID from our CARES Act funds. And we were only able to award and allocate $5.2 million. These loans were $40,000 loans. All you had to do is apply and show that you allocated those monies according to the terms and conditions of the CARES Act, and the loan was forgiven. You had 90 days to do it. And we could not identify enough businesses to take 10 million free dollars. So as we started to move forward, what we realized is, you know, you can be in business and everything that's functional doesn't function. We had during that time a lot of businesses we could have helped that were illegitimate in one way or another. So at that time, I brought Operation Hope on board and others, and we held a seminar for the businesses. So that's why I could stand here to the man who spoke and say, I've done my part and we continue to do it. And we took people all the way to the beginning, because sometimes you have to go back in order to move forward. And we helped them get their business in order, literally. So Commissioner Terry, let's be diligent to the other commissioners who may not be here, who may watch this, in creating a fund so that we can help you help us, because this is going to take a community effort to revitalize these businesses.
Thank you. There were communications with commissioners, and you don't know this, but there were communication with commissioners, and the communication that came back was not the communication that you are giving today. So we did reach out several businesses regarding that, and we didn't get it wasn't inviting for us. So thank you.
You're welcome. And let me say one other thing. With the development of the TAD, when you have a tax allocation district, a % of every dollar that comes in taxes go only to that area. So now we're able to capture that money and put it where we want it, right here on Candler Road with that tax allocation district. the TAD monies could also be utilized in that way for businesses along the Candler Road corridor to help build them up so that we could give you micro grants and funding. So just know that I hear everything you say. And I feel sometimes like I'm running in quicksand around here because there's so much to be done and your spirit wants to move quicker than you because we should have had a TAD over here 20 years ago, 30 years ago. But we are where we are and we understand now because we see these things in action and working.
I'm not going to filibuster or be long-winded because it's about, giving the citizens a chance to speak, which that was kind of cut short. But anyway, my question is that I've never, out of all of the talking, I haven't heard anybody address the elephant in DeKalb County, South DeKalb, which is the landfill. Okay? A lot of people live all around the landfill, smelling the landfill. People got respiratory issues that have been reported. A lot of things have been going on. You got 2 mountains of trash, and I mean, there is a better way. And my question is, why is there not been a feasibility study to bring a state-of-the-art facility here like I've seen and I've worked at, in other places? It reduces the trash, reduces the smell, it doesn't affect people's properties, and, it provides jobs, provides electricity, So, I mean, going forward 30 years, you're saying 30 years from now, we can't continue with the same process because you're just going to continue to affect people's property values, the health, the environment. So, I mean, this is something that I think needs to be looked at seriously because nobody's going to want to come to South DeKalb and buy property when they wake up in the morning and you smell trash. You can't sleep at night because you're breathing problems, okay? So this is something that going forward, 30 years, you can't go 30 years and continue the same process. This is Neanderthal. It needs to be brought into, mainstream. This is how other counties do it. You're not going to lose any money because the other people who are doing it, they charge the counties around to dump and bring the trash there. So there's not going to be a loss of income. It would be an increase in income. It would help the environment. It would help people health-wise. So this is something that I would really, really like for somebody to take a look at going forward because you can't continue to do this because it's not going to be profitable. It's not going to be good for the environment. And people around that live under the shadow of the landfill, their property values are not going to increase. They're going to continue to go down along with everybody else's. So, this is my question, and I would like to know, going forward, how do you intend to address that?
And I'd be happy to address that as well because we have been working on the Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson and I, and Commissioner Patrick, for, I guess, our 3rd year now. We've been a team of 3 working through the watershed, the sanitation, the transportation, all of those departments. And so there's a couple things that are coming for the sanitation department. Number one, we have voted to raise the tip fees. And the issue you pointed out is there's folks coming from outside the county dumping in our landfill, and we're charging the lowest fees of anywhere in the metro Atlanta area. And so folks are coming from all over because it's like a third, less expensive. So we have actually raised the fees to basically go to whatever the market, allows. It's going to raise $37 million annually once it's fully implemented, starting later this year, but in a full fiscal year. And that is going to be the opportunity to invest in the landfill, whether it's the advanced energy, methane capture you're talking about, because we restarted last year the methane to energy project. So we're also burning methane to power parts of the grid in that area, but we're also sending methane treated gas into the pipeline, and the energy companies are paying us, three times on the dollar for that energy. And so that's going back into the sanitation fund. Now, the next topic is going to be residential service. That's going to be a big topic that we're going to have to work on really over the next year with all of y'all, because we have had some real challenges in the sanitation collection aspect It's been hard to find CDL drivers. We recently raised the minimum wage to $17 an hour, an effort to basically address that there's a lot of folks working, hundreds of employees working at below a living wage for us. If y'all have heard of the Justice 40 initiative, that is what the Biden administration, Senator Warnock and Ossoff, our Congress members, Nikema Williams and Hank Johnson, have worked really hard to ensure that 40% of that environmental money that's going into communities all over the country have to be spent in communities that have been most impacted by environmental degradation. And so we've already put in a grant to address food waste and build composting infrastructure. That the great news about what you're saying, the smell, is when you don't divert some of that waste to a more productive process. So if you can process that food waste into compost just by doing a simple, dumpster and turn operation, you actually turn that stinky food waste in a matter of months into what they call black gold, which is compost. You pay $20, a bag at Home Depot for. Now imagine if we invested in a compost infrastructure and every DeKalb County sanitation resident got free compost for their garden, or any business wanted to have a farm, free compost, because that's our assets, right? And it'll reduce the smell as well because you're processing it. So I think it's an all-and approach. There's a lot of land at the landfill that has not fully been utilized. And several years ago, Commissioner, I think the previous director had actually envisioned a linear park around the entire property. So you talk about addressing the smell, addressing the revenue opportunities, but also the amenities, because those are things that can be utilized by the larger community, hopefully increasing property values and desirability. But you make a lot of good points, and I know Commissioner Cochran-Johnson and I are working on it every day.
And let me say to you, I don't know all things. I want you to take my card, but it was in a meeting like this that someone said, you do realize Family Dollar, Dollar Tree, and Dollar General is an economic development. And 3 years later, I passed legislation that prohibits them, and we now have restrictions around them. So I don't want to sit here and manufacture a reply to you. Now, Commissioner Terry is correct. The one thing I will say is that for 3 years, sanitation has operated at a $10 million structural deficit. So we hadn't had money to invest in some of the things that I think you would like to see. But this year, actually just a few months ago, we actually passed new tipping fees because we had not visited those fees in, I believe, 30 years. But before you can ask people for more money, you have to get your house in order. Because many people would also say sanitation hadn't been the best thing for me to use. It don't work. They didn't come. Okay? And Mr. Chris.
So I'm going to preach to the choir for just a minute. That lady is my super commissioner. I've never had a problem with her. My problem was with all the other commissioners that showed up when they wanted to get you to vote for them, and you didn't see or hear from them again until it was time to vote for them again. And because DeKalb County does not have term limits on commissioner jobs, you always re-elected the same people that were not doing anything for you from the beginning. So I didn't have a problem with my super commissioner. That was the problem I had with all the other folk. And I asked of her the one thing that she has consistently done. She has been part of the power structure. She has spoken truth to power. And she speaks truth to the people. Now, with that said, and out of my crawl, I'll let you characterize it however you choose. But in my humble opinion, You have done the job that all of the rest of the commissioners and all of our elected officials should do. You are the model. You are the one that says, I don't think forming new cities is the answer, but I think voting on it is the right thing to do. I understand your role, and I am so glad that I came out today in spite of my COVID paranoia to see this, because this is what we need to see for DeKalb County. Wrong. This is what we need to see for unincorporated South DeKalb. Here's the truth. I hope you don't mind me calling you Lorraine. Lorraine does what she says she's going to do. Lorraine does her job. And as a county commissioner, your job is to make my wanting to have a city in South DeKalb unnecessary. That's right. You've said it. You've said it, and I co-sign it. If the county was doing what the county needed to do, people like me would have nothing to say. We would be enjoying the fruits of their labor and the benefits of our tax dollars. Now, that's why we need a city. But let me get back to my important points. South DeKalb, and I'm glad to see all of this stuff that's happening around the county. I wasn't aware of it. But South DeKalb, unincorporated South DeKalb, does not need economic development equality. They don't need it. We don't need it. What we need is economic development equity. Equality is when DeKalb spends $1 in Tucker or $1 in Stonecrest. They also spend $1 in unincorporated South DeKalb. That's equality. That's bull. What we need is equity. And for every $1 that's spent on a project in Tucker or in Stonecrest or in any of the other cities, unincorporated South DeKalb needs to have a multiple of $1. That's economic development equity. So I'm glad to see DeKalb be intentional in providing economic development projects in unincorporated South DeKalb. I found out about some of them today. That information needs to go to everybody in South DeKalb so that those of us who see having a city as a reasonable alternative to get the best use of our tax dollars will get that information. And we'll have a decision to make. We'll have a decision to make. Do we stick with the county, which is now, in my humble opinion, in a concerted effort to deliver the services that we want and need? But it's more of the same.